If you have the book, you'll be on page 27, section 11. After the talk, you can read this text, or you can even read this text before listening to this or watching this video. Now, there are occasions when we hear some people saying that Buddhism is pragmatic, meaning that we try to use Buddhism in a way which will benefit us. Pragmatic in the sense that good and bad depends on how we think, for example. The Dharma is useful depending on what you need. This kind of approach is not very helpful because there are many other aspects of the Dharma which we will miss out. And very often we might look at it like as if it will only serve a purpose when we have a problem. And very often we don't understand the nature of the problem. So we've got to look at Buddhism more, or the Dharma more completely, in other words. How do you do that? We look at the Dharma as both true as well as useful. So not just useful but also true. Because if we say Buddhism is useful depending on our needs, we might be talking about something false. But the Dharma is also true. The Dharma is about true reality, what's going on around us, inside us. So when we talk about something true and something useful, we're talking about truth and value. We're going to see that these two words become very meaningful in this study. This is not just to look at Buddhism philosophically. It is based on reflection on a very important line that the Buddha has given us on the essence, on the summary of his teaching. Occasionally, it's very good to remember some of these little short lines which give us a very good idea on an overview of Buddhism, what is Buddhism really about. So here, in the Samyutta, for example, in the Anuradha Sutta, we have the Buddha declaring, I only declare suffering and the end of suffering. Dukkham ceva panyapemi dukkhasacha nirodhanti. In other words, another way of saying is the Buddha teaches only one thing, suffering and the ending of suffering. Now notice here, the Buddha says only, meaning one thing. So, but there are two parts. So these two parts form into one thing. In fact, this is a very nice way of summarizing Buddhism, if you like. For example, if you take the word suffering, we're talking about the first two truths. The first two noble truths. The truth of suffering, that there is something missing in our lives and around us. And then truth number two, the conditions for this problem, the situation is craving. So this is the truth, if you like. Or another way of looking at it is the meaning of life. If we ask what is the meaning of life, if you look around, what does all it mean? What does it mean when you see all around? You see leaves falling from trees, you see people dying, you see people having problems, you see wars, terrorist attacks, and so on. There is suffering. That's the meaning. Everything is impermanent. That's the meaning. So the first two truths talks about the meaning of life, if you like. And then this suffering arises from craving. Even if you look at wars, why are wars fought? Because people desire things. The people who are fighting desire something. Some people even say many of the wars we see today in our own times are because of the desire to control oil or the need for petrol. And the ending of suffering, Right? The ending of suffering covers the last two noble truths. Noble truth number 3 and number 4. Number 3 is nirvana, which is the goal, the ideal, if you like. And number 4 is the method, the eightfold path for reaching this goal. Sometimes 3 and 4 are switched around. Right? You have the path first, the path leading to the goal. Right? So you have two ways of looking at this. Of course, in the formula of the Four Noble Truths, you have nirvana first and then the path. But occasionally in the suttas, some rare occasion, you find the path and then nirvana, which also makes sense because you travel the path and you reach the goal. So this truth number 3 and 4 refers to the purpose of life. What is our purpose of life? To be happy, if you like. And that's what nirvana stands for. In this life, it means to be happy here and now. And then noble truth number 4 is to work at it, to start doing it. That's the journey, that's the path. So sometimes this path is called the middle way, right? And one of the very famous ways of talking about the middle way is the dependent arising. Dependent arising is conditionality. Things happen because of many conditions working together. One thing leading to another. Because here we have the famous 12 links. Right? Ignorance. Number 1 is ignorance. That's a lack of direct vision of the Four Noble Truths. Because we don't understand the true nature of the Four Noble Truths, we engage in volitional activities. In other words, unwholesome and wholesome karmic actions of mind, speech and body. And this kind of intentional actions sustain our consciousness, feed our consciousness, or vijnana, which in turn determine where we will be reborn at the moment of conception. Wherever we are reborn, name and form arises. Name and form here refers to the physical form, rupa, and the sense faculties attending it, this nama, which in turn mature into the 6 sense bases, our activities, our 6 senses. That is the five physical senses and the mind. And when any of these sense faculties meet their respective sense objects, internal senses meeting external sense object, we have contact, another sense stimulus, which in turn conditions our feelings, how we respond to such sense stimulus or sense stimuli, plural. And this is our perception, recognizing such experiences as being pleasurable or painful or neutral, depending on our past experiences. This is called craving, in fact, because if something is nice, we want more of it. And if we like something, that means there are some things which are different from it we do not like. And if we cannot fit our experience into one of these two concepts we have, we disregard them. That's called neutral feeling. And once we get this kind of idea, we cling to it. And that's link number 9, clinging. Clinging is the fueling what we like and rejecting what we do not like, and ignoring what we regard as incomprehensible, as neutral. So all this build up our volitional activities, so we go on sustaining our existence. We go on becoming. And all this lead to a potential new birth, or jati. And where there is birth, there is decay and death. So these are the 12 things. A poet called James Joyce in Finnegan's Wake in 1967 summarized all this into a very succinct little poem. In the ignorance that implies impression, that needs knowledge, that finds the name form, that wets the wits, that convey context, that sweetens sensation, that drives desire, that adheres to the attachment that dogs death, that pictures birth that entails the ensuance of existentiality. So everything is put into one sentence here. So there you are. You have meaning, purpose. The meaning of life, we are born in ignorance. So because we are ignorant, we're not capable at first of choosing between right and wrong, good and bad. As a result, we suffer. So suffering is a kind of learning process here, if we watch things as they are. So as we begin to notice, okay, if I do A, it causes me pain, so I'll stop doing A. If I do B, I feel good, yes, I've gone doing B. Then I don't hurt myself or hurt others by doing C, and so on. So we begin to learn through suffering what not to do. And when we notice happiness, we say, okay, these are the conditions that notice happiness. So those who are more observant, they feel happier. And if they are kind, if they have compassion, then they share this idea with others. So this goes on evolving through many, many lives, many, many generations. And then finally we have the Buddha, who puts everything in beautiful perspective, more complete teaching for us. So in other words, this evolution we're going through, even now, in this life itself, we're going through that. It is for us to rise above the crowded life, to rise above the crowd, as it were, to stop simply following what other people tell us, the view of the crowd, to think for ourselves when necessary. And so this is very simply called the process of individuation, to truly become ourselves, to be our true happy selves, and to be able to do something really good that we're capable of in other words. And then we help the crowd, so to speak. In fact, you might say that everybody sooner or later will have this great drive to individuate, to become an individual. You might not even realize it. You might not even realize it. You want to do something really great and good for yourself, even for people you care for, and maybe for others, for the world, if we are capable. But we must get down to basics here. What must we do first to really individuate, to really become an individual, to be happy? Number one, we have to respect our body first. Most simple thing we know is we have a body. Respect means to accept something as it is. Our body is impermanent. Our body changes. Our body grows. Our body suffers. We have to accept the body as it is. And we also perform actions to our body. If we act in a wrong way, we can be violent with the body. So we practice the first precept, not to hurt other people, other beings. And so on. We have the first three precepts that deals with the body. And then the fourth precept is speech. So all these are regarded as respecting the body, restraining our physical action through the body, and refining our speech, using our speech to communicate happily, wholesomely. So if we begin to understand this, then we are cultivated in our bodies, so to speak. Pavitakaya, the body is cultivated. This is the basis of moral conduct in Buddhism. This is the training in moral virtue, the essence of it. So here we have to go on now to cultivate the mind. So cultivating the body is not good in itself, but it has a higher purpose to prepare ourselves for cultivating the mind, in other words. So one is to the other, and they work together. When the body is at peace, the body is healthy, cultivated, it's easier to meditate, it's easier to be mindful. And so we cultivate the mind next, teaching the mind to be calm, teaching the mind to be clear. Then you have the mind that is cultivated, bhavita citta. So when body and mind are happy, healthy mind, healthy body, then our whole life is happy. But what prevents us from being really happy is, of course, our ignorance. And because of our ignorance, there is craving. They go together. Ignorance and craving, they are like conjoined things. Ignorance is blindness and inability to see beyond the surface, whereas craving is a frantic survival instinct, if you like. We're always running after some kind of goal that we think is good for us. Ignorance is blind and craving lame. So ignorance carries craving on its shoulders, and craving tells ignorance where to go, and ignorance blindly obeys. Very poetically, eh? Ignorance here is the inability to see the best in us and what we're capable of. In a sense, you might say Buddhism begins with ignorance, so traveling begins with ignorance, but that's the best place to start. Other religions might start with God, for example. So, oh, God created all things. By Buddhism, we say that's just an imaginative idea, and it creates a lot of problems. Anyone can imagine their own concept of God, and very often the idea of God also is the idea of power. Whereas if you say everything starts from ignorance, it's easier to work that way. If someone asks you, why do you think so? You can say, well, I don't know. That's ignorance. But from the I don't know, we begin to examine what is going on. What happens when you don't know something or there is training? For example, if I do not know what to do, I look around at how other people behave and I copy what they do, rightly or wrongly. So we tend to measure ourselves against other people in the same way. If somebody has something, we want that too. Right? So in the end, we find we are keeping up. We're trying to keep up with the Joneses or the Tans and the Lims. And we find we're not very happy. And the reason is very simple. The people that we are using as our standards are themselves not very happy. I mean, they appear to have things, but inside they're not happy. So when you have those things, you find, how come I'm still not happy? Well, those are the facts. So we'll learn something then. So we'll go through life stumbling with this kind of idea, but we need to awaken ourselves and say, okay, I think this doesn't work. I got to try something new, something different. Let me look within instead, right? So once again, you look into your mind, within yourself. That's what the Buddha did. He looked within himself and found the answer. The answer is not out there. Because the world out there, it's all our projection. We see the world the way we want to see the world. It's not a real thing. It's a very well-produced movie, if you like. But once you look within, you begin to understand, oh, this is how the mind works, projecting, creating all these ideas and imaginations before us, the world we live in. So we've got to open our eyes, the inner eye, to look within. Spiritual ignorance is deeply ingrained in us, so we have to look within ourselves. It is ingrained as the three unwholesome roots: greed, hate, delusion. Greed, of course, here this is where you have craving. Craving you can divide into two as greed and hate, pulling and pushing, right? And what we like, we pull towards ourselves. What we do not like, we push away. And things that we consider as neither pleasurable nor painful, we reject because we cannot make sense of it. So we regard them as neutral, boring, and so on. In other words, all these ideas are dictated by our views, how we view things. So craving, in other words, is a kind of dark, blinding shadow. And you know, where there is darkness, there is fear also. So we fear that we might not keep up with people. We might not have enough things, or we might not have anything for that matter. So this is a lack that we learn from others. But if you really look within yourself, you find that just as you are, you're quite alright, you're quite happy, and you're capable of much better things than the people around you. So we cannot simply measure ourselves in the world between have and have-nots. Having is just one aspect of life. The more important aspect of life is our being, what we really are. For example, you say, I am happy, you don't say, I have happiness. So you have to begin to start thinking like that. So our views are the manifestation of our cravings, expressed as lust and hate, liking, disliking. Thinking of have and have-nots. If something is good, desirable, I want to have that. You think like that, that's wrong. And once you think like that, then there is something called conceit. Conceit is just measuring ourselves against others. I am better than this person. I am inferior to this person, or I am as good as this person. These are the three kinds of conceit. So there is this superiority conceit, inferiority conceit, equality conceit, which we must be aware of, measuring people. In other words, when we meet people, very often that's what comes to our mind. But if you really love someone, you really care for someone, you don't really bother about such measuring. You, in a sense, to put it ironically, we try to measure up to people. We try to be on their level, try to connect with them. So this is where, in Buddhism, in terms of measuring people, we talk about the different realms. Of course, the different realms, you have the devas, humans, asuras, and so on. They have a lot of interesting stories. But if we look at these realms as actually going on around us and inside us, it helps us to understand better how we can be happy. For example, the asuras are very cunning and secretive, and they try to plant their views in us, try to control us. This is like a cuckoo bird, It is said that these many species of cuckoos, they will lay their eggs in other birds' nests, and then these eggs hatch faster than the chicks in that nest. And so when these chicks come out, these cuckoo chicks come out, they sometimes instinctively will push out the other eggs from the nest, and then they grow, and they get fed by this mother bird who thinks that these cuckoo chicks are her own. And these cuckoo chicks are very voracious. They keep on making noise and opening their mouth. They're all signs of craving, and the mother will keep on feeding them. So they are growing at the expense of others. That's how the asura operates. So these are people who take advantage of others. So once we do that, we fall from our human state. We fall from the human state to the asura level, exploiting, measuring people. Looking at people by their looks, titles, status, sanctity, and even the way they talk. And you have the animal state where people become self-destructive, killing each other, living on fear, living a cyclic life, just looking for food and pleasure, and that's all. Not interested in growing mentally, spiritually. Then there are those who get addicted to things, to their games, to sex, to money, power, and so on. These are the predators. They do not know when to stop. Then we have the people who are used to violence, the intolerant. They just feel like destroying people who do not share the same belief, for example. The mass bombers, the terrorists. It's a virtual hell they're living in. So you can find all these four subhuman realms right here around us, or even in us. Sometimes we might fall into those states. So once we know that it is possible to fall into those states, we become more careful. We remember the 5 precepts. The 5 precepts keep us from falling into those terrible states. So we want to remain on the human state at least, to have the right view, or right views that keep us human, humanize us. So here again, if we review the context of views, we can say that we need right view to correct wrong views. But there's really no opposition here. In a sense that the craving and ending of craving, yes, you can see opposition, craving, and ending of craving. But the truth is, views are a learning process. We begin to see, okay, something doesn't work, causes pain, alright, so it's because of craving, and we gotta cut down on it. So it's a learning process in that sense. So it's like it's a gradual process from wrong view to right view. Okay? And then we're looking at it is the nature of arising and non-arising. Right? So this is the second over two, we talk about arising of suffering. And then the third over two is ending of suffering. So when the conditions are right, suffering arises. When the conditions are good, suffering ends, happiness arises. So we've got to notice these conditions. So understanding conditionality is a helpful right view. The next question we can ask is, who is this who understands, or who is this who has views? Is there self, that person? Again here, in Buddhism we don't talk about self or person. Because if you really sit quietly and reflect for a moment, who is talking now? Who is thinking now? Who is watching this video talk now? Everything is moving so fast. And if you have downloaded this video, you will notice there are little frames. It's a series of frames. And in one little frame, I just move a little bit here, you know? So it's a very interesting way of looking at ourselves. We are changing all the time. And you can only understand me when this video is moving, right? And another interesting thing is, you're looking at me, I'm not there anymore. I'm long gone. But here you are, you're seeing this image, talking, sharing the notion of right view with you. So there's no self, there's no one here, so to speak. Yeah, you can say it's your mind that's watching all this. And that's a helpful way of looking at things. In other words, to think that there is a permanent self or so, it doesn't, not really helpful. Again, it's very speculative, imaginative, it leads to more speculation on problems than solving problems. But here we have a very interesting point, because this is one of the very tricky aspects of Buddhism. And people get very excited, they want to know Buddhism. But sometimes our old self tends to follow us. We are unable to give up certain old ideas, especially the idea of the self, even among famous scholars and Buddhists. Someone has done a survey of this kind of ideas, and Peter Harvey, in one of his books, he noted that, for example, there are Buddhism scholars who think that there is a real self, which is not nirvana. One of the scholars is one of the past presidents of the PTS, Pali Text Society, like Miss I.B. Honor. Or another person thought that a true self is nirvana, but it is not apprehended. Dr. Konze, another famous scholar, thought like this. Or a true self is beyond the categories of existence and non-existence. So there is this kind of self. George Green, a German scholar. And even a modern monk, the Theravada Kamayiman Panisaro, Jeffrey DeGraff, thinks that there is a consciousness without surface, vijnanam anidasana, which is experienced independently of the sixth sense media. So we all have contact with certain old ideas of ourselves. We wish that there's something unchanging, so to speak. Of course, we all can change our ideas as we mature in understanding the Dharma. But we must be aware, we must keep asking ourselves, why do we have this idea? And understand the conditions that encourage us to have such an idea. And from there we learn something about ourselves. To understand the teaching on non-self is to accept the fact that we must be willing to let go of our views. It is our views that make the self, ourself, this phantom of a self. So the more views we let go of, the more we understand there is no self. And it's not easy to let go of views. We don't understand what we're letting go of. Right? Maybe the idea of letting go of views is another view. So we've got to give ourselves that time to reflect, to be at peace with ourselves, and with that peace, we direct our mind for understanding, and then wisdom arises. And we need to study the suttas. So the idea here is whatever we do, whatever we study, we must tell ourselves, this should not be an object of clinging. It means we do it happily. If we don't have the chance to do it, we miss one lesson, that's fine. But we should be determined, of course, to find out more about ourselves. And the more determined we are, the closer to wisdom we are, the broader our wisdom expands. So this is where another way of looking at this, how to cut down on wrong views, is to learn to ask the right questions, not the wrong questions. In fact, one of the most difficult things in Buddhism is how to phrase a good question. If you know how to phrase a good question, the answer is already there. For example, the Buddha, discourages us to talk about the 10 points, whether the world is eternal or not eternal, whether the universe is finite or infinite. But these are not really helpful to us. Maybe it's helpful to the scientists. It is his profession. Yes, it helps us to understand the world better. But as the generations pass, we find this knowledge grows and grows and grows. We know more and more of less and less. Or we know less and less of more and more. That's how knowledge grows. But here we're talking about how to be at peace with ourselves, how to be happy. If you want to meditate, then let go of these questions. Then there are questions about, is the self the same as the body, or is the self and the body different? And then there are the 4 notorious questions. Does the sane exist after death, or does not exist after death, or both exist and not exist after death, or neither exist nor not exist after death? So these are beautiful philosophy. If you like philosophy, this is fun. But it's going to prevent you from doing your meditation long enough. So the true purpose of the spiritual life as such is not all this philosophizing or scientificizing, but to understand yourself, to understand the nature of suffering and how to end it. So this is where, when someone, Malunkyaputta, comes to see the Buddha and asking all these 10 questions, then the Buddha says, there's no real good in answering all these questions if your aim is the spiritual life. We are like imagine you are a man wounded with a poison dart. And you're not going to, say, oh, I'm not going to let anyone pull this dart out until I know who shot this, what kind of arrow is it, what kind of dart is it, what kind of poison is it, what is it made of, who shot it, which direction, what's the velocity of the dart, and so on. We will die before this, before anything else, right? So the first thing we must do right now, what must we do right now? Pull out the dart. You don't need philosophy, you don't need science, you don't need anything for that, just pull out the dart. It's a very powerful figure, very powerful parable. What do we need to do right now? It's a very simple question we've got to ask ourselves. And you find that's the best thing we can do. What should I do right now? Do it. And then things will fall into place. You worry too much about the past, it's gone. You worry about the future, it's not yet come. But the now, as you watch it, as you respond to it, it goes into the past just as quickly. And then as you work and you respond, the future has already come. So, what shall I do now? It's a very wise question for us. And what do I do now? We come back to this idea of we need to train to calm, respect body and speech. So, why do we need to do that? Because we have a body and we communicate with speech. So definitely we have to make sure these tools of our existence and our communication are at its best. So in a sense, if we talk like this, then we can say, in a philosophical sense, that Buddhist ethics is naturalist, because it is rooted in a sense of psychological aspects of the doer. We talk about the body and speech should be cultivated so that the mind can be cultivated. And this kind of approach can be said to be objectivist, because the rightness or wrongness of an act is assessed independently of the subjective moral perception or preference. In other words, whichever way you think, there is this right way. There is a right way. And there is also a goal. Right? Our goal is happiness, freedom from suffering, liberation. So in that sense, it is called teleological. It is not deontological. Deontological means simply doing our duties as Buddhists, performing rituals. Something that does not get us anywhere. So there is a goal, we have the path, to walk the path and reach happiness. Of course, when we talk about natural morality, we also talk about conventional morality, the two aspects of morality. Natural morality is the morality of the 5 precepts. So the 5 precepts is natural because it begins with not killing, because life is precious. Anyone will agree with that. Even animals are afraid to die. And if you go on further, you find all the other precepts fit in, right? If you have a life, you want to be happy. You don't just want to be alive, you want to be happy. To be happy is to have things. And if someone takes away those things, you won't be happy. So the second precept is against stealing. And then thirdly, okay, you have life and you're happy, you have things, but you have no freedom. Let's say you're caught in a sort of a prison, you can't move around, you won't be happy. So you need freedom, the right. And freedom here, very simply put, is the right to say no. So the third precept, although it talks about not breaking the precept against sexual misconduct, means you respect the person's person, because sexual misconduct means the other person's body is ravaged, is abused. So we have to, in other words, respect the person's person, give the person freedom, space. The fundamental truth is very easy to understand. Truth. All these first four values can only be right if they are truthful, if I'm truthful. Right? So there must be the value of truth, the standard of truth. That's the fourth percent. The fact that you're listening to this recording is based on the fact that we agree that I will tell the truth. Otherwise, no point of I'll be wasting my time, you'll be wasting your time watching this whole recording. So this truth is the fourth percent. What about the fifth percent? The fifth percent means there's something bigger than all this. That's the mind. Because all this is because of the body. Then we want to cultivate the mind. So we need to keep the mind pure and clear, calm and clear. So the most basic way of doing this is not to cloud the mind up with dreams and trance. So that's the fifth percent. So it's so clear and beautiful. That's the sequence that the Buddha has given us of the 5 precepts. So in the earlier part of my talk today, I've described a bit of what right view is. For example, there is ignorance, craving, and so on. And then in the second part, you notice I have talked about how the Buddha prescribed what to do, not to kill, not to steal, and so on. Right? So you have description, prescription. You have teaching on the truth and the value, meaning, purpose. Right? The description of the Buddha has given us about the world, about ourselves, that gives us an understanding to the meaning of life, suffering, and so on. And the Buddha tells us what to do. That's prescription, to this, to that, right? So, and you see this in the Four Noble Truths also. The first 2 truths are describing nature of the world. The last 2 truths tell you what to do, right? Describing, prescribing. The first pair, what is true. Second pair, what is desirable. So these are different ways of looking at the Buddha's teaching as a whole. Now let's come down to basics again. So when we look at the 5 precepts as we practice them, the 5 values of life, happiness, freedom, truth, and wisdom, that is the mind, we can ask ourselves again, how do we apply this socially in the world? How do we convince other people to practice these wonderful values, these wonderful precepts? If you understand the values behind the precepts, then you find it is easier to practice them. And at this point also, I might just make a quick mention that if you have loving kindness, it makes practicing the precepts much easier too. Because you are filled with loving kindness, that means you have compassion, you find it's easier to respect life, it's easier to not to take the not given, to respect another person, to tell the truth, and to calm the mind. Now, one of the very useful and effective and convincing way of showing other people the right view on the 5 precepts, 5 values, is called the Golden Rule. Of course, you all have heard the Golden Rule, right? But what does it mean in Buddhism? Okay, let me read something here from the Vedudvareya Sutta. I'm on page 34. The Buddha defines the Golden Rule in this way. Here, house lords, a noble disciple reflects thus: I am one who wishes to live, who does not wish to die, who desires happiness, who dislikes suffering. Since I am one who wishes to live and does not wish to die, who wishes happiness and dislikes suffering, if someone were to take my life, that would not be pleasing nor agreeable to me. Now, if I were to take the life of another, or of one who wishes to live, who does not wish to die, who desires happiness, who dislikes suffering, that would not be desirable nor agreeable to him too. What is undesirable and disagreeable to me is undesirable and disagreeable to others too. How can I inflict upon another what is undesirable and disagreeable to me? Okay, this is from M55, Veludwaraya Sutta, section 6 of the Sutta. If you want to look this up, it is in Sutta Discovery 1.5. This is a beautiful passage. This is you can say, the essence of the Golden Rule. And here beautifully described, clearly described. You don't find this anywhere in any other religious literature or even philosophy. So in other words, you tell yourself, okay, I value life. If I value life, that means other people also would feel the same way. In that case, since I do not want to be killed, I should not kill others too. It makes sense. Right? So this is co-intelligence. And if you apply it compassionately, it's called wisdom. In fact, you might say, in the Sutta, it's called the threefold purity. Here, again, we have from the same Veludwaraya Sutta. The Buddha says, having reflected thus, from what we have just read a while ago, he himself abstains from destroying life, he exhorts others to abstain from destroying life, and he speaks in praise of abstaining from destroying life. Thus his bodily conduct is purified in three respects. Right? So we practice ourselves, we encourage others to do too, and we motivate them, we praise them and to do so. So this is how we maintain a very happy environment that is morally virtuous. Then there is something which can be called the threefold rightness of actions. How do we know an action is right? Take for example, let's say you decided you're looking for a job and you're not sure what kind of job would be right for you as a practicing Buddhist. This is very simple. In the Ambalatika Rahula Vada Sutta, we have the Buddha teaching Rahula that to reflect on an action. If an action will harm me, or the action will harm others, or harm both me and others, meaning everyone or the environment, then I should not do it. On the other hand, if this action does not harm me, does not harm others, and does not harm the environment, then it's okay to do it. So this is a very basic idea of the three rightness. So here we have kind of covered almost everything here. We train ourselves to the body, understand the nature of the body, it's impermanent. And based on impermanence, we begin to understand life is precious. We begin to treasure our property and use them wisely, because what we have is what use we make of it. And they're all impermanent. And even this body is impermanent too. So we need to respect this body while it lasts. The truth appears to be permanent, but our vision of the truth is impermanent. Wrong view is impermanent. Only right view is permanent. One way of looking at it. In other words, once you have right view, you don't have to change it anymore. What's the meaning of this? We will look at this in our last study. Okay, so let us close with a short reflection. Whenever we listen to a Dhamma talk or we study the suttas, we begin to see more and more about ourselves. And if we stay focused and attentive, more and more self-understanding arises. So to understand the Dhamma means to understand ourselves. To practice Buddhism means to learn about ourselves. When we understand ourselves, we understand others and the world more clearly. Reflecting in this way is very good mental karma. Talking about this is very good speech karma. And acting in this way is very good body karma. By the power of all this good karma, may we find peace in this life itself. When we meditate, may our minds be calm and peaceful and focused right away. May we be blessed with happiness and success in this life itself. By the power of all this good karma and many, many more that we have done, our generosity, keeping the precepts, meditating and so on, maybe attain spiritual liberation and this true meaning in this life itself. In this moment of peace, let us send our loving kindness to all our dear ones, to those who are unable to join us for the Sutta study, that they will be well and happy. Even those inimical to us, may they too be well and happy. And may the Dhamma touch them in due course, that we all be happy together. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.